right, Dave, tell me what you think about Pride.
I don't, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I always regard any sort of interaction between any of the BBC's 100 sexes as totally beyond my comprehension anyway. But
Well, I don't think really that's what Pride's about, to be fair. I don't think most people are talking about 100 genders. But anyway, you go on, Dave.
Yeah. The thing is that basically we've had it rammed down our throats now for years, and we're talking, what, less than 1% of the population?
About 5%, Dave.
About 5.
Yeah.
So it's very much a case of the tail trying to wag the dog, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, we get gay pride movements, gay parades, fake scholars, goodness knows what else. And really speaking, I don't really want to know what they get up to. I mean, I was not going to tell them what I get up to, and I don't want to know what they get up to.
No, but look, Dave, I know that some people will feel a bit upset that you said that about ramming it down people's throats, but I don't want to get into an argument with you. But I would really like to understand where that feeling comes from, because I think that is going on a bit in some segments of society, that people feel as though they feel threatened somehow by continually hearing about equal rights. What's going on? What's going on for you there, Dave?
Anymore, is it? It's about preference to the gay. That is what it comes across.
Do you think? Honestly, Dave, is that how it feels to you, that gay people now have more rights than straight people?
More rights, more publicity, more representation on everything because of my fellow Welshman diversity.
Do you really think gay people are overrepresented in public life?
Yes. Well, I'm not worried about public life. It's what they say is they are overtly gay. Now, the straight people are quietly straight, but the gay people are overtly gay.
Well, hang on, wait a minute. What does that mean? Overtly? Hang on, explain that one to me.
Openly. You've got to recognise the fact that, let's say that I am gay. That you've got to recognise that. Now, whereas if I'm just a straight guy, I just get on about my business. I don't push it. I don't tell you that I'm sleeping with a woman or anything like that.
Well, I don't go around saying I'm sleeping with a man either, Dave. I think most gay people don't want to talk about it all day long. The reason why there's a pride parade is because LGBT people have struggled to get those rights in the past. So pride is about a couple of things in my mind. One's about celebrating the rights that they have won and saying, look, we're here and we appreciate these rights and we really want to celebrate it. No, they haven't, though, Dave, because being gay was criminalised until the 1960s.
Well, it was still, a lot of cases, it's still considered a perversion. But the rights to do what you like as a person, you've always had, the same as the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one, Dave, because you never got thrown in jail. There's never been a law in Britain that's thrown people in jail for having straight relationships. So that I don't take that point.
I think what has driven a lot of this, as a few other contributors have said, is, I suppose you might call them an extreme part of the trans community that wants to go into what were traditionally female-only spaces, changing rooms, sports categories, alarmingly prisons, and the like. And in doing so, they've actually eroded women's rights. And if we're talking about not feeling safe, and if we're talking about a lot of anger, as your last caller was mentioning, somebody who said screaming about paedophiles or something in the centre of Birmingham, well, if you go along to any kind of a women's march that wants to speak, where women actually want to have their say and see the kind of anger and violence that somebody like Posey Parker has been subjected to, then it comes from both sides, unfortunately. I wish there was an understanding, but it does feel like women's rights, biological women's rights, are being eroded by this kind of surge in this sort of trans rights campaign.
Why do you think it's got so angry, though, Jan? Because I totally respect your view.
Well,
I totally respect your view, but when we step back for a moment and we consider that trans people are only about 0.5% of the population, why has it blown up into such a huge debate that is so angry on the two extremes, as you point to?
I think it's the simple fact that one party wants something that the other party is very loath to let go of. Women fought very, very hard for their rights, okay? I have no hatred towards any other person because they're LGBTQ or their race or anything else, okay? But women fought very long and hard to get the rights to do the most basic of things, and it feels like those rights are being eroded in the name of giving them over to another group
I see your point, and I know that there are other women who share your point. I suppose, I mean, maybe it's just the nature of my personality and my profession is that I sit on the fence and I try to understand where everyone's coming from. So why can't both things be accommodated? Why does everything have to be so nasty?
Well, it's not just
not
nasty.
You. I don't mean you're being nasty.
No,
but
I know you don't.
You know it's getting nasty on both sides of the debate, as you've pointed to.
Very.
So why can't we accommodate both things? Why is there no compromise in this discussion?
How would you compromise? How would you compromise biological women wanting female-only spaces, particularly when it comes to their safety? And some people are using this for nefarious and very dark purposes. And it's really unfair on biological women. And as I said, we fought very long and hard for our rights. And yes, okay, you could say LGBTQAI plus people did as well. But how do you get a happy medium then? Do you just say, okay, we'll come in then, because it's not going to please all women?
I think you can have some safeguards. So, for example, I believe with women's refuges at the moment there are exemptions already built in, so that trans women can't necessarily get automatic access to a women's refuge. So, I just wonder whether if people were able to pause the anger and to sit down and have a really sensible conversation, because I agree there are really tricky things like at what age do you allow children to change gender, to use hormones, etc., etc., etc. These are perfectly legitimate questions that should be asked and discussed and thought through really sensibly. But it just feels like nobody really wants to have that sensible conversation anymore. Everyone's really dug in and is just really angry at each other. Well,
if you don't care about children, potentially.
No, but you can care without just, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Jan, because I think you're being perfectly respectful, but you can care about these things without, going to a march and shouting paedophile at trans people or whatever, or vice versa, people going to women's events and shouting TERF or whatever.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's a very sort of extreme example, but these are very serious questions and they're very big decisions that are being made and are also... for example, it just seems that there is legislation about all of this, and you can't discriminate against people on the grounds that there's 9 protected characteristics that are enshrined in law about all of this. So it's not like somebody's not thought about it, but these are really big, really serious questions, and they have to be thought about very carefully, and it's hard to stay completely, subdued and cool, and when it's
not subdued. I wouldn't want people to be subdued. I just want people to be reasonable and kind to each other and come to it from a place of kindness. I think that would be, like I've just had a message here from Sarah in Newcastle, for example, who says, stop giving this woman, that's you, Jan, the benefit of the doubt. She's a TERF. She's horrible. To trans people, she is being nasty. Okay. She's mischaracterized. Right. So, I'm not picking on Sarah, because I'm sure, if
she's allowed an opinion, but I'm not.
Well, this is the issue, isn't it? But this is the issue, Jan, is that it always gets so angry, doesn't it?
Very small-minded of that person. But then, I'm not saying she can't have an opinion, but she's saying, I can't. So it has
but then
to
I
be
think
on both sides. There has to be an acceptance, and it has to be a cool-headed thing on both sides.
Katie now, who's in Leicester. Good afternoon, Katie.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. So, Katie, just to be clear, you are trans, because that's relevant to the discussion that we're having right now. What did you make of some of the points that Jan was saying just before the break there?
Well, my eyes were rolling so much they nearly fell out of my head, to be honest.
Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised? Because there's so much passion in this debate.
Oh, there is, and there's absolutely no need for it, and it's usually aimed at trans women. She was trying to make out that trans women were a threat to cisgender women. That cisgender means non-trans. So I know you know, but yeah, explain. But we're not. We're absolutely not. And they pick on one or two criminals. That there are criminals in all sections of society, but you just don't class everybody just on that one criminal, and that's the thing. And I think the problem is that we talk about pride. I mean, pride is a protest. It's always been a protest, and the whole reason for pride was to gain gains, in law that certainly lesbian and gay people have enjoyed over the years, but they were tough fought for, and they were really hard to get. And now it's got to a point where lesbian and gay people have managed to get those. But with trans people, we're about 40 years behind lesbian and gay people. And so there's all the abuse that was being thrown at gay men, certainly back in the 70s and 80s, calling them paedophiles and predators and all that kind of stuff. That's all being thrown at trans women now.
Do you think, when you're analysing your own side of the debate and really being critical of your own side, do you think maybe there are some on the trans side of the debate that haven't helped by perhaps pushing really hard with concepts that most people just can't, they're just not in that place to understand 100 genders?
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone says there's 100 genders. I mean, that's ridiculous.
It's a small minority, but there are some people who think there are 100 genders, but it is a small number of people who think that. But that's going on, and that's creating. That's almost making a mockery, I think, sometimes of the sincerely held views of people who feel as though they were born in the wrong gender.
Absolutely, and there are some people who are aggressive on both sides that make things a lot worse for both sides, and the whole thing gets inflamed. But the trouble is, at the moment, what's been happening is that you get people like Lee Anderson, the Conservative Party, sort of saying that the next election is going to be fought on things such as trans rights, and when you look at actually what most of the electorate cares about, they don't really care about that most. And they want to care about, are they going to pay their mortgage? The cost of living. Are they going to put food on the table? All this something. Are they going to get fixed if they get broken and go to hospital? That's what people mainly care about. But they're using trans rights, this minority thing that most people don't care about. They're using us as a bit of a smokescreen just to try and divert attention away from the complete pig's ear that they've made of everything else.
In the space of 5 years, we still haven't got the ban on conversion therapy, which for anyone who doesn't know is about changing someone's gender or sexual orientation or trying to change them. And it just shows how quickly things have changed in the space of 5 years, because she thought that was a relatively uncontroversial idea and it was just a kind thing to do to outlaw it, whereas now obviously it's part of a hotbed of really fierce debate around conversion therapy.
And I think the problem is that it's been, these culture wars has been sort of ignited, and then we've got a mainly right-wing press who've been amplifying it, because most of the mainstream media in the UK is anti-trans, and the trouble is it just makes things worse, and people start believing it. And I do trans awareness training and inspirational speaking to organisations all over the world, and I've got lots of. I'm sort of very out. I couldn't be more out if I tried, and I've got lots of great friends who are 100% trans supportive. But even then, some of them have started believing some of the things that they've read in the media and heard on the radio or television or whatever. And it does rub off. The more it's repeated, the more it rubs off.